All right, welcome everybody to the paper prototyping workshop put on by the Indie Game Academy and the East Bay Game Dev Meetup Group. Hi, Jed. Jed runs the Game Dev Group. So we have a 2-hour workshop for you guys today. A big chunk of what you're going to be doing today is just building a paper prototype. So hopefully you have some craft supplies with you. If you don't, go searching through the house, pillage the kitchen, get some. There you go. Jed has it all set up. Thank you, Jed. Jed will be our demonstrator, our model for the evening. The point of today is to give you some idea of how the professional game dev sphere uses paper prototyping. So we're going to give you a demonstration, an introduction on how to actually create them, but we're also going to talk about what situations they're valuable in and then other situations where they're less valuable. Jed here has prepared a demonstration for you, so you're also going to get to see a working prototype, and then all of you will make your own fresh prototype today and play it with somebody in this room. So we're hoping to have a fun time and talk about paper prototyping. So this is paper prototyping and you. This is just a paper prototyping workshop, but I decided to call it that for some reason. This is put on by the East Bay Game Devs and Creatives. Jed here, the representative, as well as the Indie Game Academy. IGA is a program, we call it an Indie Game Accelerator. We run a couple of different programs that help people publish games. That's our main prerogative, our main directive. We run a bunch of really cool programs, and one of the ways that we find people to take these programs is we run free classes like this. So as you go through today, if you enjoy this, we would love to have you sign up for some of the stuff that we put on, or at least come and join our Discord. I'll give you some information on that at the end. So for today's agenda, we've got 6 main things we're going through today. First of all, we're going to talk about why we even prototype in the first place. It is astounding to me, especially for younger creatives in their career, I'm saying, people who haven't been making games for very long. I'm astounded by how many of those people don't prototype, because it is such a simple process to go through and it improves the quality of your games by so much. So first, we're going to talk about why you even prototype. Second, we're going to talk about how to paper prototype, what it actually looks like, how to put one together. Third, we're going to see that example game from Jed there. Fourth, you are going to get 20 to 30 minutes to make your own little mini paper prototype. 5, we're going to play those games with each other. And then 6, we'll come together, close, have some final thoughts, that kind of stuff. All right, so selecting a game. Age-old conundrum. How many people have more than, let's say, 10 games that they want to create? I've got only one person. Okay, that's actually less than I thought. I'm sure you're all lying. You've come up with many concepts you've wanted to make before. But it is an age-old conundrum to actually choose what game we work on. I know that at least I personally have so many games that excite me. So how do I actually go about picking one of those games? This is the main reason for us to prototype, or one of the main reasons. An amateur game developer comes up with a concept that they think is cool or unique or whatever, and they go, that's what I'm building. And then they spend 4 years building it, and then they're disappointed and sad that no one wants to play it, and they feel like they've wasted 4 years of their life. A game dev god or goddess actually spends the time to go through some kind of written vetting process where they actually take many concepts and reduce it down to the one that they think is the most viable. This increases your chances of success, whatever success actually means to you. And it just is it's worth, if you're going to spend 4 years working on a game, or even a year working on a game, or 6 months working on a game, it's worth spending just a little bit of time to make sure you pick the right game. So in the next couple of slides, I'm actually pulling this from a lecture by a guy named John Nelson Rose. Some of you may have met him, I'm not sure. He is the founder of a company called Opium Play. He now works at EA, and he's a huge lover of rapid iteration and prototyping. So the next slides, all the ones that are pink, are from him, if you want to look him up and look at some of the stuff that he does. I'm curious, just from the room, I love getting some interaction and engagement going on. Why would you prototype? Why do we prototype? What are some of the reasons to prototype?
To reduce risk.
Yes. Hey, look at that. Wow. 10 points for you, John. Yes, to reduce risk. That's one of the big ones. And that is a mindset shift that I encourage all of you to take in. When we work on a game, for perspective, if anyone hasn't gone through a professional publishing cycle, I worked at Lumosity for a time. They're the brain training game people. The games that we built were really simple, 2-dimensional, just memorize like stuff on the screen, that kind of stuff. The production cycle for those games, generally around 9 months. So we're spending nearly a year to make a little tiny 2D game. So you can imagine that if you wanted to make a Stardew Valley by yourself or something like that, want to do the classic solo developer journey, you're spending years on it. So it's pretty high risk for you to just jump in and be like, yeah, I'm going to give 4 years of my life to this concept I came up with 30 seconds ago. So the main reason for us to prototype is to reduce that risk. The process that John likes to talk about in his rapid prototyping steps is to define what your actual problems are, research some information, look at some other examples of games, ideate those ideas, and then identify winners. That fifth step, identifying the winners of those potential ideas, is one of the main reasons that we do paper prototyping. Does anybody have, who here keeps track of their game concepts? Who's got like a big list of these? If you don't, do this. Here's your first lesson. I don't know how many ideas I come up with on a daily basis. I just have one doc that I throw the idea in. I write like a sentence about it so that I don't forget about it. Super useful to be able to go back to old ideas. Even if you never build these games, oftentimes you'll find ideas springing out of other existing ideas. But regardless, there's this classic problem of going, okay, so I've come up with 10, 15, 20, 50 game ideas that I want to work on. How do I actually reduce that down? This is where we get to what we call concept funneling, which basically just means I dump some ideas in the top of an established funnel, this vetting process that we brought up earlier, and somehow we reduce those ideas down to just the one we're going to actually work on. So some of the steps that we might use, filter listing is a great one. This is actually a filter list from my own studio called the Delve Bros. You just basically rank your games in a couple of categories, see how they score. But paper prototyping is another one of those useful ways to vet ideas and pick a final concept. So enter paper prototyping. Before I show anything off, can somebody describe to me what a paper prototype actually is?
I know what it is in like for a non-game app. I do not know what it is for a game app.
Yes. Yeah, that's great. So, well, how about this? Describe it to me for a non-game.
For a non-game app, often you're working like on a page flow or some, you know, or there may be reveals and stuff. So you lay out pictures of what the screen's going to look like, and then you say, well, what would you do to do this? And then you have them do that. And then you may even use Post-it notes or things to like drop down a menu or something to just basically create a, you know, a very fast, low fidelity thing that you can use to make sure your basic ideas are not crazy.
Yes, John is racking up the points tonight. Somebody's got to start competing with him. There's no actual points. I'm making those up. Yeah, you pretty much nailed it, and that's pretty much exactly what it is in the gaming world too. It's a as close of a representation as we can get to the final product. In this case, it's a game instead of an app, using just paper and other physical objects. So the quick example that I have for you, this was created at, I'm not exactly sure where this is from. Let me mute this. But this is a group of students who made a multiplayer platformer game where you can actually jump around and play the game. And this is a very classic, simple paper prototype. So a couple of things to point out. Each of these players is actually, quote, playing the game. And the game creator, whoever they may be, I think it's this person with the bracelet over here, is running the game. They're acting as the game engine. So they're moving stuff around and manipulating things as players activate levers and pick up items. You can see them doing that right here. So what you are essentially getting is a playthrough, a play test of your game with little to no investment. Wouldn't be no investment, with very little investment. You don't need to code, you don't need to do art. It's just enough for you to test that core game loop and if the game is actually fun. So it's essentially the same thing as an app wireframe or something like that, except you are doing it for a video game and then you are acting as the game engine. All right, so it's a test meant to reveal something about the game. Typically, you are proving or disproving a specific hypothesis. For you guys, and the way that I generally use paper prototypes, usually that hypothesis is just, is this game fun? Could this be a good concept? There's no coding. The tester acts as the game engine, and it's meant to allow rapid iteration. So for an example, I worked at a company, when I was working at Lumosity, the first place I worked was called Lumi Kids, which was educational games for 2 to 6-year-olds. And when we were building those games, we churned out, we did a pretty intense, I think it was 6 games in 6 months, if I'm remembering that right. We did a pretty intense amount of actual prototyping in order to choose those concepts. When we did a digital prototype, so something actually, you know, in Unity or our game engine where the player could actually play on the computer, typically we finish 2 of those in a week. That's pretty fast as far as digital prototypes go. And even that is a pretty significant investment. If we only have 6 months for our time budget, we're putting in a lot of time to test these digital prototypes. So a step before that can be our paper prototyping. If we've got 10 ideas of a game that we could deliver to a kid, we can test them super quickly with a paper prototype, just invest an hour per game, and then choose from those which we want to actually commit the time to building digital prototypes for. So what makes a good one? Founded from a hypothesis. That might just be, is this game fun? That might also be, I'll show you Tailmore a little bit later, which is a game that I worked on semi-recently, which one of the core hypotheses was we could have a Slay the Spire type combat system that was more fun, given that players were working together instead of one player coming up with a combination of cards. So that was our hypothesis for that game, and we wound up proving it with a paper prototype. It has some kind of testable elements. It answers some specific questions for you, and it focuses on player feedback. You're seeking to answer those fundamental questions. Is this fun? Do people understand it? Is it something that could be a promising game? The pros of doing this at all. So putting together a paper prototype, is it worth it? The pros of this. The main one is just that it's super fast. We're going to give you half an hour to come up with a paper prototype, and it may not be the final version of your prototype. You may sort of polish it a little bit before actually moving on, but you can quite realistically put together a paper prototype in half an hour. You can spend an hour or two on it and really make a sleek one, but that is still so much less than what it takes to make even the simplest of digital prototypes. So it's simply about being fast. It's its biggest advantage. It's also cheap to put together. So if we're talking about risk, if we're in our business mindset, it's the lowest level investment for your prototype. So I'm investing less of myself. Instead of just jumping into 4 years of development and risking 4 years of development, I am risking just a couple of hours to do a paper prototype and then some play tests. It requires you to simplify your core game loop, which I always think is really interesting. It's sometimes hard to translate a game concept into a paper prototype, but that exercise can help you focus what your game loop actually is. And your prototypes, this is an interesting one. You tend to get really honest feedback from these. And I think that's because they are simplified. So people are a little bit more comfortable telling you they don't like the game if it's just a piece of paper than if you're actually sending them something that's a little more polished. And they're just fun. The cons, the reasons not to do a paper prototype, they're not very representative of your final game. A lot of the time you're going to be missing features, or you're going to have a lot of wait time while people are like, moving elements around for you, stuff like that. Some concepts are challenging to translate, but 95% of games can become a paper prototype. Anything that is turn-based or requires the player to sit and think, super easy to paper prototype. Do it, no problem. Anything that's live action can be hard. So imagine trying to make a FPS game. That's gonna be hard. But for most games, you can get some kind of a test just on paper. So an example I like to use, I had a student at one point who put together, was making a game where you acted as a cat who had gotten loose on a space station. And this cat can wander around and mess with stuff on the space station, a 3D live action game. In order to paper prototype it, he just had like a Word document with a picture of a cat that he would drag around the screen, and then like some pictures of stuff the cat was allowed to interact with. And the player would just say like, I want to move over to the box. And then one of the ways that he tested if this was a good concept is he had a button that was hidden on the screen that the player could find. And if he pushed the button, if you had the player touch the button, he would drag this JPEG of an exploded space station onto the screen and be like, you found the self-destruct button, congratulations. And every single time he did that, he got a laugh out of the player, even though this is just some JPEGs he slapped onto a screen in like 30 seconds. So that is a perfect example. Like that game, you can't really test on paper, but you can get a sense of if people think this is going to be fun. It cannot be played without the game creator. That's another big negative. If I have a digital prototype, I can send it to like 400 people and give them a survey and get feedback from them. Can't do that with a paper prototype, of course. And assuming the concept performs well, you're probably going to make a digital prototype anyway. So you may be wasting the time. So the place where these really shine is, what do I even spend the time to digital prototype? They really shine in that step before committing to building anything. This is sort of just game design 101 and not necessarily paper prototyping, but something I find important to call out. When you're building a game, all of the elements of a game, the music, the art, the game design, the story, the code, they don't sit on the same line. The game design is the backbone of your game, 9 times out of 10. There are games that the game design is extremely simple. So like narrative-based games, for instance, where you're just choosing story options, where there are other elements that hold more of the weight, where the story in that game would matter a lot more. But in the majority of games, your game design matters most. We've all played games that AAA studios dumped millions of dollars into that look gorgeous, but are trash games that are just not fun. And we've all played the opposite too, little indies with incredible game design, Stardew Valley, like I just mentioned, where the art or whatever is not as strong, but the game design itself is immaculate. So that's really what you're trying to test here. You're getting at the game design. Could this be fun? And remember that you are the game engine. So this is an example that when I found I love, this is just like off of Reddit. This is a paper prototype right there. Adorable. A couple of things to call out here, besides just being adorable. First of all, you can see that the game creator, the game creative, is acting as the game engine, right? So they are actually dropping the new pieces in, deciding which pieces to drop, deciding at what speed to drop the pieces, and then they're engaging with their player, and their player can actually play. The other part of this, though, that I think is really important is this is not a representative version of Tetris. There is one key element to the game design of Tetris that's missing here. Can anybody point out what that is?
There's no real time pressure, or at least not the falling block aspect.
Yeah, no real time pressure, and lines don't disappear when you complete a line.
Oh yeah, that's
right?
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Which would be much more challenging to make a paper prototype for, because you'd have to, like, I don't know, remove the pieces or like cut them or something. That could be kind of fun. But what he is getting is some kind of a test of if this is a compelling game. And he seems to have answered that with a yes. This little girl is enjoying herself playing this game, even though it's missing core features. So you're not looking for a representative game. You're looking to test that core game loop, right? Is it fun? All right. So one thing that people get concerned about sometimes is where to actually begin. As I've said a few times now, the place to start is simply the core game loop. So identify what the player is going to be doing over and over again. So in Tailmore, the dungeon crawler that we created, there's a combat system that's similar to Slay the Spire. So the turn begins, enemies display what they're actually going to do. They're going to attack a character or whatever. Then the players choose their attacks, what they're going to do in response. The attacks resolve, and we go back to a new turn. So this is our core game loop. In order to start building a paper prototype, identify that, and then put together some pieces that you can actually use to run this test. So I'm not going to go too in depth into this because Jed has a great example game for us in just a moment. But to show you, this is a real digital paper prototype that I put together to test the combat for our deck building dungeon crawling board game. And you can see that it's just, some JPEGs on the screen. In order to demonstrate what the enemies are planning to do, it's just a piece of text. So it just says that this character is going to stab at the rogue. You can see that my UI is replaced with just a whole heck load of text. It tells us what stab does way over here, but it's enough for the player to be able to play. It's enough for us to test if this combat is compelling. Our key hypothesis here was that we could limit what each individual player could do, but still have an interesting level of combos and intersections of moves by having multiple players doing things at the same time. So in our game, instead of you doing two moves back to back that create an interesting combination of moves, we have multiple players all doing one thing. You can see the rogue here is going to heal himself, and the wizard, as always, as wizards do, is going to fireball the room. All right. So I believe it's just about time for Jed to jump in. The biggest questions that you're looking to answer with a paper prototype are three things. Number one is just, could this be fun? This is the game design question. Could this be a compelling game? Could it be interesting? So you're looking to see the player's reaction. You're looking to see if, even through this ugly piece of paper that you put together, am I delivering some magic? And you're looking for those magic moments. So that paper prototype that my student made of the kitten that could explode a space station, that's a magic moment. He got people to laugh pretty much every time he did that. Now, not only does he know that the game could be fun, but he also knows what is the magic of this game and what he can maximize on when he moves forward in production. So add more stuff with along the similar veins. Maybe the kitten can explode the space station, but they can also mess with the life support or, break the shield so an asteroid runs into part of the station or something like that. What are those magic moments that you get that you can expand upon to make your game better? And then the third thing, and this is one that I find people skip a lot, is what are the risks or the weaknesses of this game? Some of them are going to be inherent in paper prototyping. Generally, it's going to be really slow. If I was running this prototype, I'd have to, manually update each of these pieces of text and come down here and tell them what you're going to do. it takes some time. So there's some inherent weaknesses that are just a part of the medium, but you're also looking for what could sink the actual idea. So, people don't care about putting moves together with their party members, and they're kind of disappointed if they only get one move. That's an inherent risk. If I ran into that, maybe I wouldn't work on this idea further. Okay. I am going to hand it over to Jed for a second. Jed, are you prepared?
I am. Yay.
Heck yeah. All right. So Jed is going to show off an example. Take it away. Five or 10 minutes.
So for the sake of demonstration, my prototype is probably even simpler than what most of you are going to create tonight. It's really just an exercise in testing a rule set. So I came up with a set of rules and I started testing it. So I was looking around for materials, looking for inspiration. I kind of just plopped everything on a desk and was like, okay, here's some paper, here's some scissors. And the thing that I was attracted to was my Dungeons and Dragons dice, just because I like Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm playing a campaign right now. And I'm like, what if you took Dungeons and Dragons dice, a set of random number generators essentially, and played Yahtzee with them. So that's where the kind of seed of the idea started. And as we know, Yahtzee is where you roll 5 6-sided dice, standard, casino dice. You get 3 rounds of rolling, and you can, at the end of any one of those rounds, you can set aside some of the dice, and that becomes essentially kind of like a poker hand that you're building over the 3 rounds. And you get a certain amount of points based on like what combination of straights and what am I trying to say, pairs and triplets and all that you get at the end of your round. I tried that with the different dice that I have from Dungeons and Dragons, which for the sake of explanation is a 4-sided dice, 6-sided dice, 8, 10, 12, and 20. And it was a bit complex. So to try and come up with these different, hands that someone would have within all that combination. So I was like, okay, maybe there's another way to go about this. So what I did is that I kind of pivoted and I was like, okay, what if I had a set of numbers at the beginning of the round that were randomly generated that the person then had to go and try to match? So that is essentially the game that I came up with. The interesting element that emerged from this is that the range you generate from your numbers is really important. Like if I were to generate, a list of random numbers from 1 to 10, it's much more difficult than a list of random numbers from 1 to 4. Basically, I kept thinking about this and I was like, okay, well, this could either be a mini game in D&D. Like in D&D, you have to roll just a D20 and the rogue might lockpick the door or not. Or it could be, in something like Skyrim where you're trying to match up certain colors to different pins on a lock or something like that. So I'll show you the paper prototype that I came up with. I'm actually going to play a couple of rounds as well. Here is a lock that I made earlier. This one's an easy lock. And we can think of this, okay, let's give myself 5 rounds to try and beat this lock. So I've got, I'm going to remove this dice because it doesn't belong, but these other 6 ones, I can roll them all. Let's get a little bit of shot here. I'm trying to get a 3 and a 2. So I got a 3 and a 2. I got on the first one. And ta-da, I win. So that was an easy lock. That was an easy lock. So let's try a very hard lock. This one is 6 pins or tumblers, depending on how much you know about locks. And let's say I'm a pretty good rogue, so I have 5 different chances to get this. So yeah, we're looking for 3s and 2s and 5s and 6s and 1s. Now, probably going to get a few of those. So I've got a 5, got a 1, got a 3. But now the strategic decision needs to come in. Is that like, yes, I rolled a 3 here, but also these ones tend to roll higher. So I should probably maybe save the 4-sided dice for now, but place these other 2. So there's some strategy that comes into it. So now I've done 1 round. So now we're on round 2. Looking for, I got a 6 on the D20. That's wonderful. And none of these other ones are useful. So I'll place a 6 onto my lock here. Got that pin. I got 2 more. I'm looking for a 3 and a 2. There's a 2. That's pretty good. Yeah, I think I'll place that one. I think I've got 2 rounds of rolling left. Looking for a 3. Look for 3. Our last round. If I don't get this 3, I don't get it. So here. Maybe luck. Come on. I failed the luck. So you can get the idea that like this could be a really exciting thing for a group of adventurers to do. That is my paper prototype. And, you know, I think that like in a game, you could put a skin over this to make it like more like an actual lock, of course. But really what I'm doing is testing a rule set. So in that, my hypothesis was proven in that like, this is an easy lock. This is a very hard lock. And that proved to be the case. So there you go. That's my paper prototype.
Nice. Congratulations. That's awesome. I hadn't actually seen that yet, guys. That was my first experience for the rest of you. I like a couple of things that you did there, Jed. The first one, I love the use case that you mentioned. This could be something, you know, I like to DM. This could be something that I give to my players. Perfect example of a real world reason to paper prototype besides actual game production. I also like how you sort of went through a couple iterations even in the paper prototype. That's another example of how you're saving time by doing it on paper, because I don't need to adjust my core programming. I can hammer it out just by scribbling stuff on a piece of paper until I'm like kind of ready, you know, fairly prepared until before I start actually putting it into the digital form. So well done. That was wonderful. You also saw how to run a play test even over camera. So one of us could have been playing that game and Jed would have just rolled the dice for us. Not as nice as doing it in person, but totally viable, totally reasonable. So it's about time for you guys to make some games. We're going to do about half an hour. We're looking good on time, so we should be fine. We're going to give you a couple of different things. We're going to do a couple of different things. We have how many people? We've got 10 people in the room. So maybe we'll do 3 rooms. Each of those rooms you'll just be sitting there with a couple of people. The whole reason is just so that you have a few people to talk to instead of a big daunting room, while you have 20 to 30 minutes to put together your own paper prototype. We are going to give you a theme like this is a mini game jam in just a second. You will follow that theme in order to make a fresh original paper prototype and practice this practice. At the end of that 30 minutes, or if everybody finishes early, we can finish early. We're going to come back together, maybe talk about it a little bit, and then do some play tests. We'll do a speed round of what I like to call speed dating play testing, where you're going to be put into a room with just one other person. You will play your game and then play their game with them. So you have a couple of minutes to do both. And the 2 of us during all of that time, Jed and Willem, will be popping around, giving you some advice, answering questions, etc. Okay, here we go. Your theme. We're going to split you into breakout rooms in just a second. Your theme to make a paper prototype over the next 30 or so minutes will be 3 minutes or less. So these have to be games that you can play in paper prototype fashion, which is typically slow, with another person in under 3 minutes. Okay, so you have about 30 minutes. Jed and I will be coming around. We'll switch back and forth between the 2 rooms a little bit. If you have questions, you can ask the room, and you've got 30 minutes to put something together on paper. We will then be testing together. So you'll be, pointing your camera at the paper. So maybe an extra constraint for you is something that's not too difficult to play over a camera. All right, the rooms are open. You should now get a prompt. No, they aren't. There we go. You should now get a prompt to join. So because we're doing totally fine on time, I thought we would do a little example just to get everybody in the mood and understand how playtesting works. So I guess here, let me give the mini lecture. I've just got 3 slides on playtesting, and then I'm going to hand it over to Adrian to run his game because I thought it was really fun. So playtesting is really, truly, I make a joke with my students sometimes about how prototyping and playtesting, basically playing your game with people is like the one secret. Everybody's like, here's the 10 secrets to game development. This is the one secret. This is above all else, the thing you can do to make your games better. Play your games with real people, play them with a diverse set of people, and play games with people consistently throughout your entire production process. You'll make such a better game. So I'm going to talk just for a couple of slides about how to run a solid playtest. A lot of people have different perspectives on this, but this is how I approach it. The primary reason that we playtest is because it breaks us out of our biases. So we might think that our game is amazing and easy to understand, but that's because we built the game. And until we play it with real people, we won't know that it isn't amazing and is way too confusing. The people that you play test with are the people you wind up building the game for. So if you only play your game with your mom, you are building an exceptional game for your mom and nobody else. So actually run your play tests with a diverse set of people. What I recommend you do is choose your target audience, who you're actually building this game for, casual RPG fans or something like that, and then play test with them. And then do a couple of play tests outside of that sphere as well to test your hypothesis of who actually loves your game, and then also just to get some outside perspectives as well. And you can play test more than just the game design like we're doing here. So you could do a test on the UI or on a new boss or something like that. What makes a good play test? Founded from a single hypothesis, this game could be fun, this boss could be fun. Finish by proving or disproving that hypothesis. Focus on the player feedback, so you're there to hear their responses, you're not there to show somebody a cool game. And leave with some action items. Man, they really hated this boss. We got to get rid of it. Before you actually start playtesting, create a prototype. You all have done that. Congratulations. Come up with that hypothesis or objective. Today, you're just trying to see if this is a fun game. Decide on any questions that you need answered. Is this boss understandable? Is there tell good enough? Does the player know they're going to do an overhead swing? I don't know. What are some of the things you actually need answered? And then find somebody to play, of course. During the playtest, introduce your game, but here's one that I find a lot of people not doing. Give them just enough information. A lot of people will flood you with the entire life story of them and their game and how they spent so long coming up with this concept and how, man, I really just love this concept and I hope you love it too. Don't do that. Primes them for a terrible experience, waste time, give them just enough to play. This is Tailmore. It's the scan and play dungeon crawling board game. You're going to be testing the combat in Tailmore. You're going to pick one card to use every turn to fight these monsters and then have them start playing. Give them just enough to play. You can answer more questions if you need to, if they get confused. And then another really big one, ask them to think out loud. So as they play, just literally at the beginning say, and if you would, please think out loud as much as you can. Because a lot of the times when people are playing games, they don't make any noise and then you are not, privy to the information that they are processing as they play. Avoid distracting them. Don't talk to them unless they need to ask you a question or something, and take lots of notes. Post-play test, go for, here's another funnel. We love funnels here. Go for sort of a funnel approach to asking questions, asking for feedback. So start with the biggest, most open-ended questions. What did you think? And then get a little bit more specific. What did you think about the combat? What did you think about this particular enemy? Was this specific move understandable or too confusing? Did you like this UI? By starting the most open-ended, you'll get the most sort of authentic feedback, because one of the things that is tough about playtests is people tend to try to tell you what they think you want to hear. So by asking just open-ended questions, you are leading them on the least. And then write down your action items. And that's basically it. So we're going to do a playtesting exercise now. I'm going to have Adrian run a little sample playtest. So Jed, did you play Adrian's game with him?
No.
All right.
He was quite upset with me for that.
Do you want to volunteer to play with him now then? Adrian, you want to run a little play test?
Yes.
All right. So here's your demo, guys.
Okay, this game got two sides, each have 8 Scrabble tiles. We're each going to try and make a word from any subset of these Scrabble tiles, and those 2 words are going to compete against each other. And the criterion is based on a random adjective that's generated by a website up here. In this case, it's going to be shivering. So Jed, come up with the most shivering word you can.
Okay.
And I will do the same.
So Adrian there did a great job of giving just enough information for Jed to play, but not leading him on too much or anything like that.
A few minutes later.
Okay, I'm going to go with my very first word.
Me too.
Why don't you say first, since I've already isolated my word, I can prove it.
Okay, mine is bite, B-I-T-E.
Hey, that's what I was thinking of too.
Okay, I went with fail because people are afraid to fail, and when people are fearful, they shiver sometimes.
Okay. Nice.
Mine's
Jed, what is your?
No, yeah, part of the game is to we're like lawyers. We're trying to prove that ours is the one that we like, or that we deserve to win.
Because of frostbite.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
I mean, I think I do.
I vote for Jed, but I
do too.
I think I vote for Tony or Anthony more because he says wet.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Oh, yeah, that's
Oh.
true. That's true.
Nicely done.
And
All
fat's
right.
pretty good too. I like that.
Yeah, food.
This is where Adrian would probably start asking Jed what he thinks and trying to vet if this is a promising idea. But for the sake of tonight, we can just move on. Thank you for showing off your game, Adrian.
So the idea is basically, so I took your name, Tic Tac Tesseract. So it's a 3D tic-tac-toe board cube. And so when you claim, like regular tic-tac-toe, you claim a square or a space. So now you're going to claim a cube. So if you claim a corner piece, you'll be claiming all three. If you claim centerpiece, you're only getting the one. And then if you claim a side piece, you'll be getting the two faces. And so, I mean, my initial idea was, okay, well, maybe I can do 3 tic-tac-toe boards. But I quickly thought, oh, I can't make that work. So then I made the cube, and then I'm like, well, maybe it's easier to make the flattened cube.
Right.
I did recognize that, if I claim this one, I'm going to have to do some mental math and go, okay, well, then I'm going to claim this one and this one and this one down here. I'll be X. So I think X goes first, right?
Sure.
I'm going to claim the top right spot on A, face A.
Okay.
So that'll give me the bottom right on E and the top left on B.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna claim. Let's say the top right on B.
Top right on B with a circle. Okay, so then that'll be the top right on E.
Correct.
And top left on C. Yeah.
Correct. Yep, that's what it is for me too.
Okay. I'm going to claim the bottom left on face A.
Yeah. What do I feel like I already lost? Okay. I'm going to claim the only one I can and do the middle on A.
Okay. And then I'm going to claim the bottom right on A. Just top right on F and bottom left on B.
Okay, and then I'm going to play the bottom on A. Which we get the side.
I would do the right. Yeah, exactly. So you get the top on F as well. And then I guess I would do the right on A, the right middle.
And then you win.
Yeah.
Okay. So the thing that immediately pops out from me is that whoever goes first has a pretty big advantage, just like in the real tic-tac-toe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because like basically what you did is you played like the perfect strategy on one of the faces, right? And I think I blocked you incorrectly, but so it's like, how do you have it be, how can you implement mechanics in a way where the fact that it's 3D gives one of the players an unfair advantage if they look ahead a few moves or something along those lines?
Yeah, because that's what I'm thinking. And it's on the one hand, the cube makes it a lot easier to visualize, but I was almost wondering if the 2D, if you lay the cube flat out, it requires a little more effort to figure out where, like if I claim this square, it's also claiming this square and that square.
Right.
And so, you know what I mean? Like it's relatively simple. I say, oh, well, okay, it's these 3 or it's these 2. But I'm wondering if maybe the laid down flat version might even be a little more interesting because you have to like, because then it's a slut. I mean, as much as code can be a little bit of battle of wits, right? Because you're like, okay, so I can visualize, and I guess at that point then it becomes who can visualize the cube better.
Yeah, and if you look at like the 4D chessboards, that's sort of what they do. That's how they lay it out.
Okay.
So yeah, so I'm not exactly sure how we would play through it, but let's just say, say we see someone here, and I see that they're coming this way. So then I'm going to get behind the couch while they continue on. So I'm going between the couch and the table, and then and the thing is that you don't know where the dog is too. It's apparent here, but you wouldn't know, so you'd have to check every room. So I'm saying, okay, I want to go to this kitchen area first.
Right.
And then this person turns around, let's just say you get caught.
Sure.
So you have to talk to Uncle Jimmy or maybe just Jimmy. And maybe there's a little prompt that says like talks about cruise minus 15 seconds or something like that.
I was just saying like maybe you could pepper in some like clues throughout the house. So like you would know like this particular character was like interested in this. Although that might be
so
more
avoid that topic.
Yeah. Or they really hate this, or they don't like this person. So
they hate crypto. So go talk about crypto. Get them out of there real quick.
That's a good idea. Maybe it's like maybe the dog or whatever the objective isn't as apparent. So maybe it's like hopefully you don't have a dog in a cabinet, but like maybe like the cabinet's rustling or something's rustling, and you open it, and it may or may not be the objective, but instead it will say, like you said, Jed, like Uncle Jimmy doesn't like crypto. It'll be something like that. So even though you're not getting to the objective, you're getting something that could help you if you do get caught. Yeah, but thank you guys. No, that's it though.
That's really cool. I really like it. So I hope you noodle on it some more.
I want to. No, I appreciate your guys' feedback.
Welcome back, everybody. Hopefully you had fun playtesting. So we're pretty much wrapping down now, closing it up. I think let's just have like a little bit of open dialogue since we have a couple of extra minutes. What are some of the things that you guys learned today, either about playtesting, maybe about your specific game, something you might change? What are some of your takeaways from today?
Yeah, I think honestly, one really big thing that I learned from today is that one, it doesn't take too long to actually make a paper prototype. And then two, it really validates like, is this fun or not? Because I feel like when I first was drawing everything, I'm like, oh, okay, this in my head conceptually, it seems like a good idea, but until I get it down, I don't know if it's really fun. And then it wasn't until I play tested it with Tyler and then also Jed as well to kind of just show how it would work. And they had a lot of great ideas about how to actually make it more fun. And then from there, I can kind of make other ideas. So definitely a good way to make sure, like you said, you don't waste too much time or years even on a game that may not even be fun. So
yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's really, we are almost always, depending on the person and their personality, I guess, we're almost always the biggest fan of our own games. So being able to break ourselves out of that little box and just let somebody else tell us the truth can be really valuable. And paper prototyping is one of the fastest ways to do that. Any other thoughts or lessons or just interesting moments that you had from today?
Honestly, I'm honestly just impressed that everybody, like 60 minutes ago, we got started on making paper prototype games, and you've all already made them and tested them and have a general idea of which direction they could go. So like, well done, everyone. Like that was impressive.
Yeah, it really is. So something that I noticed is a lot of you have sort of a concept, but not a full game loop. And I think you started to notice that. So like Marcus, for instance, you were like, here's this concept. We're like avoiding relatives. It's a moment, a relatable moment that I have and that I think other people have. But then when you actually put down on paper what the gameplay is like, you found it a little bit lacking, it sounds like. So that's a perfect way for you to go, okay, so I have a concept and people think it's funny. But the loop needs more work. The loop needs, a little bit more massaging. All right. So does anybody have any further questions before we shut down and say goodbye to each other?
I just a quick question.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think that I, as kind of a takeaway for me is, being able to do something on paper means that you can iterate quickly on it, right? So like I actually came up with like 3 different versions of 3D tic-tac-toe, right? I was thinking of, okay, maybe I'll do it three boards, maybe I'll do an actual cube, maybe I'll do a flat cube, and just even go to the play test, and I'm like, the cube is nice, but it might be too simple. And so I was thinking, well, maybe this flat one might be a little more interesting, because when you claim a face, you're also having to claim other faces. And on the cube, it's relatively easy. I can say, oh, it's just these 3, right? But on the flat one, it might be a little more interesting. So I thought that was a nice kind of way to iterate quickly on these ideas, rather than like, having to go through all your bug tests and make sure it works, and then come back, starting over.
Yeah, it almost gives you a little bit more flexibility, because inherent in a video game, inherent in any kind of code base, when you want to change something, there's 15 different things that are all relying on that thing that you also have to change. Versus in paper, you just crumple it up, throw it in the trash, and get a new one.
Yeah, the nice thing about paper prototypes is your manager is not tempted to ship it.
That's good too.
Because if you show it on a computer screen, they'll say, why can't we ship this today? Because, you know,
why can't we just send this? Love that. All right, so let's shut it down. I have a little bit of homework for everyone here, which is run this playtest with somebody in person. It's such a different experience, and another huge part of why paper prototypes are awesome, that you can actually sit down with somebody at a table and put this thing on the table and actually play with them, get them to physically touch it, interact with it. Here, you know, we're in COVID times, so I like to, a lot of my lessons are taught over video camera, and you can definitely get a lot done just over camera, but so valuable to sit down with somebody in the real world. So that's your homework. A bonus for you is to paper prototype a different concept that you've been thinking about. So if there's something else that you really want to make, throw together a paper prototype, maybe share it in your guys' Discord, and then potentially come share it in our Discord. So like I said, we run programs to help people publish games. Our main one is a 3-month accelerator. It's super fun and awesome. Because I know all of you are cool people and not weirdos, or at least weirdos in the best of ways, you are invited to come join the Discord there. And if you want to talk about joining any of our programs, we would love to have you. I've got a Calendly here. You can schedule a call with me. If you just want to chat about life too, I'm down for that. All right. Anybody have any last questions or anything to say? I've had a great time working with everybody. I love running classes like this. This is actually the first time Jed and I did the paper prototyping class. We sort of conceived of this together. So would love to hear feedback too, if anyone has feedback on this particular exercise.
Zach, I
want to say thank you guys very much. I enjoyed it.
Definitely. All right. So yeah, come hang out in the IGA Discord. Definitely keep hanging out in the Game Devs Discord, the East Bay Game Devs Discord. We'll keep doing more stuff together in the future, I am sure. And if you want to chat about doing a crazy, basically online Hogwarts for game development, feel free to hit that Calendly and schedule a call with me. I'd love to chat.
And on the East Bay Game Devs, and I just want to say real quick that it's crossed my mind a few times that I'd really like to do one of these in person. That would definitely be post GDC, because I'm running like 1 million events right now and I have no brain space left. But eventually in the future, Willem and I might collaborate on something like that. So we'll see. But I hope you enjoyed tonight. It's a little bit of a test run. So thanks for bearing with us.
Thank you, everybody. Take care. I'm gonna go to sleep. It's like almost 11 here.
Good night, Willem.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Goodbye.
everyone. Bye.
Thanks, bye.
Cheers, everybody. Peace.